The echo of the gavel cracked through the courtroom like a gunshot, sending a chill across the silent rows of benches. Claire Bennett sat frozen, her hands trembling as the judge's words carved into her future. Daniel Moore leaned closer, whispering softly, "This isn't the end, Claire, hold on." His calm voice clashed with the suffocating weight pressing down on her chest. Michael Harris stared straight ahead, his jaw locked, a loyal presence masking unspoken doubts. Across the aisle, Victoria Kane's composed smile revealed nothing, her eyes sharp, as if she had written the ending long before anyone else knew it. Ethan Cross slipped quietly through the back door, eyes darting with the restless energy of someone who had seen too much too soon. The air smelled of polished wood and fear, while Claire's breath grew uneven, as though the entire world had collapsed within the four walls of that chamber. Claire walked out of the courtroom, her heels echoing against marble floors that seemed to stretch endlessly. Daniel followed close, his voice a steady presence. "You're stronger than this verdict." She nodded faintly, but her eyes betrayed her fear, as though justice had turned into a blade, cutting deeper than truth. Michael stood near the doorway, his gaze fixed on Victoria, who lingered with a calm authority that unsettled him. Ethan trailed at a distance, sketching hurried lines in his worn notebook, as if trying to capture the weight of a moment slipping into shadow. The building's cold silence pressed against them all, every footstep magnified, every whisper heavy with unspoken truths. Claire paused at the courthouse steps, the cool air biting against her flushed cheeks. She whispered, "It shouldn't have ended like this," her voice breaking. Daniel placed a firm hand on her shoulder, his calm words steadying her. "It hasn't ended, Claire. It's only begun." Michael moved to stand beside them, protective yet conflicted. Across the plaza, Victoria's sleek car waited, her figure casting a long shadow under the fading sun. Ethan sat on the stone railing, eyes restless, as though he held a secret capable of unraveling the day's verdict. The city's noise swelled, but for them, time felt suspended, heavy with dread and uncertain hope. The wind caught loose papers from Claire's folder, scattering them across the plaza. Ethan leapt from the railing, snatching one midair with quick hands. He smirked. "Not everything is what it looks like." Claire's eyes widened, her heart pounding, as though his words pierced a wound she had hidden. Daniel stepped closer, frowning at the boy's sudden intrusion, while Michael's stance grew sharper, protective instincts flaring. Victoria's gaze lingered from across the lot, her lips curling into an unreadable expression, as if she already knew what Ethan hinted at. The moment carried the tension of a storm yet to break. As the last papers settled at Ethan's feet, he held it out with a mocking tilt of his head. "You don't want this lost, trust me," he said, voice dripping with certainty beyond his years. Claire's hand hesitated before reaching, her breath uneven, her pulse quickening with dread. Daniel's eyes narrowed, sensing the boy's dangerous knowledge. Michael stepped forward, his voice firm. "Enough games." But Victoria's car door opened with a quiet click, and her figure moved gracefully toward them. Her presence shifted the air, every movement deliberate, every step heavy with power. In that instant, the fragile balance between truth and deception threatened to shatter. Claire sat in Daniel's modest living room, the walls lined with books and soft light from a single lamp. Her voice cracked. "They decided my life in minutes." Daniel poured tea slowly, speaking with calm weight. "A verdict doesn't define truth. We find what they bury." She looked at him, eyes searching for ground under her feet. Michael leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her with quiet concern. Ethan sprawled on the floor, sketchbook open, muttering, "You're all missing what's obvious." His restless lines captured shadows no one wanted to see. The air hung heavy, every word pulling them closer to something darker. Daniel placed a cup in Claire's hands, his calm tone steady. "This is where we start, not where we end." Claire whispered, "What if I'm too broken to keep fighting?" Michael shifted uncomfortably, eyes locked on the floor, remembering his own betrayals. Ethan smirked without lifting his gaze from the sketch. "Broken doesn't mean useless." The boy's words cut through the quiet, unsettling and sharp. Daniel's steady presence filled the silence, his warmth wrapping around Claire like a fragile shield. The storm of injustice still pressed outside, but in that room the battle for her strength had just begun. The kettle hissed again, but the room's silence grew louder. Claire unfolded the paper Ethan had caught earlier, her lips parting as she scanned the words. "Where did you get this?" she asked sharply. Ethan's eyes gleamed. "It found me." Michael stepped forward, his voice low. That document wasn't supposed to leave the courthouse. Daniel leaned in, brows furrowed, sensing the weight of what they held. The lines of text seemed to twist the air, carrying the suggestion of tampered evidence. Claire's pulse raced as fear shifted into something sharper, an edge of anger she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Claire slammed the paper onto the table, her voice shaking but strong. "They lied." Daniel leaned back slowly, the calm in his face cracking into worry. Michael's hands curled into fists, caught between loyalty and guilt. Ethan laughed under his breath. "Finally, you see the game." Claire stared at the words, anger and disbelief warring in her chest. The document exposed the cracks in the trial, a truth buried under influence. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows like an omen. The room seemed smaller, the walls closing in, as though the truth itself could suffocate them if left unspoken. The room's fragile calm shattered as Victoria's knock echoed against the door. Claire froze, her breath caught, while Daniel's eyes hardened. Michael exchanged a quick glance with him, silent tension tightening the air. Ethan rose quickly, almost too eager, whispering, "Shay's here for it." Claire clutched the paper to her chest, pulse thundering in her ears. The door's shadow loomed larger with every second. Daniel whispered firmly, "Do not open it yet." Victoria's voice carried smoothly through the wood. "Secrets have short lives, Claire." The sound was chilling, controlled, a velvet threat sliding under the threshold. The night pressed heavy against Daniel's windows, as whispers of rain tapped faintly on the glass. Claire sat at the table, scanning the paper again, her voice tense. "This changes everything." Daniel leaned closer, calm cracked with urgency. "It means we're not fighting shadows. Someone engineered this." Michael shifted uneasily, crossing his arms tighter, his silence heavier than words. Ethan sprawled in the corner, sketching frantic lines, his mutter sharp. "She is always 10 steps ahead." Claire lifted her eyes, the name burning on her lips. Victoria. The storm outside deepened, mirroring the storm inside, trust growing thinner with each passing second. The lamp flickered, casting the room into shifting shadows. Claire whispered, "If they tampered with evidence, how many others suffered before me?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Too many. But we expose it." Michael exhaled sharply, eyes darting away, as though the truth struck too close. Ethan laughed bitterly. "Expose it, she owns the truth." Claire's pulse raced as she stared at Michael's uneasy stance, sensing a fracture. Daniel reached for her hand, grounding her, his voice firm. "Then we fight differently." The walls seemed closer now, secrets pressing in, while outside thunder cracked like a warning. Daniel spread the documents across the table, pointing to signatures that didn't align. "Look at this, Claire. This is no mistake." Her breath caught as her eyes traced the forged trail. Ethan leaned forward suddenly, snatching a page, his tone mocking. "She makes her lies beautiful." Michael grabbed his wrist firmly, voice low. "Don't toy with this." For a moment, the air turned electric, distrust sparking between them. Claire slammed her palm on the table, her voice breaking but strong. "Stop. We need to know who we can trust." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. The silence cracked as a sudden thud hit the front porch. Everyone froze. Claire's pulse spiked, her voice low. "Someone's outside." Daniel motioned for quiet, his calm shifting into sharp vigilance. Michael moved toward the door cautiously, his steps heavy with dread. Ethan pressed against the wall, sketchbook clutched to his chest, whispering, "She's already here." Claire stood gripping the paper tighter, the weight of unseen eyes pressing through the walls. The rain hammered harder, drowning out breath and thought, until another thud echoed, deliberate, taunting, like a warning wrapped in sound. The door creaked open under Michael's hand, revealing a sealed envelope soaked by the storm. He picked it up slowly, his expression unreadable. Claire whispered, "What is it?" Daniel's eyes narrowed, scanning the black wax seal pressed with a symbol none of them recognized. Ethan leaned in, whispering with fascination, "She leaves gifts, not threats." Claire's chest tightened, the paper in her hand suddenly heavier, as though connected to the envelope's shadow. Victoria's invisible hand seemed to tighten around them all, her presence felt in every flicker of the storm outside. No one dared break the silence first. The black wax seal cracked under Michael's hand, and inside lay a single page. Claire leaned forward, her breath shallow as Daniel read aloud, "The witness you trusted was never real." Ethan's grin widened, voice sharp, "Fabricated people, fabricated truths." Claire's eyes burned with disbelief, the trial unraveling before her eyes. Michael stayed still, face shadowed, as though the revelation wasn't new to him. Claire whispered, "You knew." His silence answered louder than words, tension snapping like a blade. Outside, lightning split the sky, marking the moment betrayal began to take shape. Claire's voice rose, raw and trembling. All of this was built on lies. Daniel's calm cracked, his voice fierce. "Then we tear the lies apart." Michael muttered, barely audible, "Not all lies can be broken." Ethan threw down his sketchbook, pages spilling with unsettling drawings of courtrooms drenched in shadow. Claire's eyes locked on him, demanding, "Why did you keep this?" Ethan's smirk faltered, his gaze darting, revealing a fear he hadn't shown before. For the first time, she realized his knowledge carried a burden tied to her past. Outside, thunder roared like an answer to her unspoken dread. Daniel lifted one of Ethan's drawings, eyes narrowing at the details. "This is the courthouse, but look here," he said, pointing to a symbol etched in the sketch. Claire froze, recognizing it from the letter's seal. Ethan muttered defensively, "I draw what I see." Michael stepped closer, tone sharp. "Where did you see this?" Ethan's jaw tightened, his silence louder than denial. Claire whispered, "You've been to her." The room chilled as realization spread. Ethan's knowledge wasn't chance. It was connection. The storm raged louder, but inside, the betrayal thundered deeper than the sky outside. The front door swung open without a knock, and Victoria Kane stepped inside with composed grace. Her dark coat dripped rain, yet her movements remained elegant. Claire's heart pounded, voice breaking. "You planned all of this." Victoria's calm smile never wavered, her tone smooth. "Planned? No, I simply ensured what was inevitable." Daniel stood, shielding Claire, his voice hard. "You can't silence truth forever." Victoria's eyes lingered on Ethan, and for the first time the boy looked away. Michael stood frozen, caught between duty and guilt, his silence louder than the storm roaring outside. Victoria moved closer, each step deliberate, her gaze fixed on Claire Droll. "You hold evidence, but evidence bends," she said softly, almost like comfort. Claire's hands shook, clutching the papers tighter. "You can't erase everything." Daniel stood tense, eyes burning with defiance, while Michael's silence revealed a crack in his loyalty. Ethan finally spoke, voice low, "She's been in my head long before tonight." Claire's breath faltered, realizing the betrayal was deeper than she imagined. Victoria's poise never faltered, her presence a blade slicing the fragile thread that held them together. The truth was no longer hidden, it was weaponized. The storm outside raged as if echoing the chaos inside. Claire's voice trembled but rose strong. "You turned my life into the yitter." Victoria's calm smile remained unbroken, her words like silk. "Justice is not truth, it's power." Daniel stepped forward, his body tense. "Then tonight we break that power." Michael's hands shook at his sides, his silence heavier than confession. Ethan pressed against the wall, muttering with restless energy, "You can't break her, she bends everything." Claire's chest burned with defiance, her hands clutching the papers that now felt like weapons. Lightning flared, casting them all in sharp fragments of light and shadow. Claire slammed the papers onto the table, her voice raw. "This proves everything you've buried." Victoria's gaze sharpened, voice chilling. "Proves nothing without loyalty." Michael's breath hitched, his eyes betraying the weight of secrets. Daniel's voice thundered. "Loyalty to lies is betrayal." Ethan snatched a paper, his tone venomous. "You still don't see. She gave me truth when no one else did." Claire's heart fractured, realizing Ethan's allegiance was never hers. Victoria's eyes softened, almost maternal, as she placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. The storm outside screamed louder, as if the world itself recoiled at the fracture inside. Michael's voice finally broke, rough with guilt. "I knew the case was rigged, but I thought I was protecting you." Claire's world tilted, her breath sharp. "Protecting me? By silence." Daniel's fury ignited. "You betrayed everything we stood for." Victoria's lips curved, her words cutting. "Even loyalty crumbles in storms." Ethan laughed bitterly. "He chose survival just like I did." Claire's eyes brimmed with rage and sorrow, her voice shaking. "You all chose her over truth." Thunder roared, rattling the windows, as if nature itself judged their fractured bonds. Michael lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. Claire's voice cut through the storm. "I refuse to let your lies be the end of me." She tore one paper free, raising it high, the ink smudged by her trembling hand. Daniel stepped beside her resolute. "Then we fight for every breath of truth." Victoria's eyes glimmered, unshaken. "Fight, all you wish. The system feeds me." Michael's silence fractured, his hand reaching toward Claire, torn between redemption and ruin. Ethan pressed forward, shouting, "She owns us all." The walls seemed to close in, stormlight flashing, as though the house itself held its breath for the collision about to erupt. The climax erupted as lightning plunged the room into stark light. Claire's voice rang fierce. "You want to erase me." She slammed the paper into Daniel's hand, uniting them in defiance. Michael fell to his knees, voice cracking. "Forgive me." As his loyalty crumbled, Ethan turned, his voice breaking for the first time. "She promised me truth." His words dissolved into silence. Victoria's eyes burned, the mask slipping as her poise cracked. Her voice sharp and final. "Truth is mine to shape." Claire's heart pounded as the storm roared in unison, the battle line drawn not just in law, but in blood. The storm eased into a heavy drizzle, but inside the room, silence weighed heavier than thunder. Claire stood rigid, her chest heaving, as Daniel gripped the paper like a lifeline. Michael knelt broken, voice a whisper. "I chose wrong." Claire's eyes burned with sorrow, her words sharp. "Your silence cost everything." Ethan stood apart, eyes darting, his voice cracking. "She promised me I mattered." Victoria remained unmoved, her voice smooth. "And you do as long as you're mine." Claire felt the system's cruelty embodied in her presence, the illusion of justice bleeding away into raw betrayal. Claire stepped closer to Michael, her voice softer yet filled with steel. "If you want redemption, stand now." His hands trembled as he rose, shoulders sagging under guilt. Daniel's gaze steadied him, firm but wary. Ethan scoffed, voice bitter. "Redemption doesn't exist here." Victoria's lips curled, her tone almost tender. "The system swallows guilt. It never forgives." Claire clenched the paper tighter, defiance flooding her veins. "Then I will not let it swallow me." The storm's echo outside grew faint, replaced by the raw pulse of choice and consequence inside the walls. Michael's voice cracked. "I'll testify no matter the cost." Claire's heart thudded, shock and relief colliding. Daniel's hand tightened on the paper, his words measured. "Then we strike back with truth." Ethan laughed hollowly. "Truth won't survive the courtroom." Victoria's calm voice followed like poison. "Hell be destroyed before he ever speaks." Michael's eyes burned with guilt-turned determination. "Then I burn with it." Claire's breath caught, seeing the man who had betrayed her now risk everything. The system that once suffocated them seemed closer, yet fragile cracks began to show. The house groaned as the wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth through the open door. Claire whispered, "This isn't victory, it's survival." Daniel nodded, his tone steady. Survival is the first step. Ethan leaned against the wall, his voice sharp. Survival is all she leaves you. Victoria's eyes gleamed, her words deliberate. And even that is mine to give. Michael stepped forward, voice breaking but strong. Not anymore. Claire's pulse quickened, sensing the fragile shift. Justice was not restored, but the power that once caged her was beginning to fracture. Claire lifted her gaze, her voice steady but cold. You may twist laws, but you cannot erase us. Victoria's smile faltered, the first crack in her mask. Daniel exhaled slowly, as though a battle had only begun, not ended. Michael stood tall beside them, weighed by guilt, yet steadied by resolve. Ethan's restless energy flickered into silence, his eyes locked on Victoria as if torn by invisible chains. Outside, the rain slowed to a soft rhythm, as though mocking an uneasy resolution. The truth was not triumphant, but alive, and that alone was defiance. Morning light bled through cracked blinds, turning the room pale and cold. Claire sat at the table, eyes hollow, the papers spread before her like fragments of a broken mirror. Daniel stood nearby, shoulders squared, his voice steady. This is the start, not the end. Michael lingered in the corner, weighed down by guilt, whispering, the system will crush us. Ethan leaned against the wall, his voice sharp but uncertain. Unless we burn it down first. Claire's gaze never lifted, her fingers tracing the inked words, as though searching for pieces of a truth already lost. Daniel leaned closer, his tone urgent but calm. They can't erase what's already exposed. Claire's lips parted, her voice low. Exposed doesn't mean believe. Michael's eyes darkened, his whisper heavy. Truth is useless without power. Ethan laughed bitterly. And power always belongs to her. The room fell silent at the mention of Victoria, her absence louder than presence. Claire's hands trembled, yet her eyes began to harden, shards of defiance breaking through the cracks of despair. Outside, the morning air felt heavy, as if the storm had left something unseen lingering in its wake. A faint melody drifted from the hallway, soft and haunting, the tune Claire knew too well. Her breath caught, whispering, Lily. The sound of her sister's favorite song clawed at the silence, though no one else moved. Daniel's eyes narrowed, searching the hall, but nothing stirred. Michael turned pale, whispering, memories don't vanish, they haunt. Ethan's sketchbook slipped from his hands, pages spilling with drawn faces of someone never forgotten. Claire's chest tightened, her voice breaking. She's still with us. The song faded, leaving only the hollow ache of what was lost and what still lingered. Victoria's voice echoed in Claire's memory. Though she was gone, truth bends to power. Claire clenched the papers tighter, her jaw set, whispering, not forever. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder, grounding her resolve. Michael stepped back into shadow, his silence betraying a man too far gone. Ethan picked up his sketchbook, his voice quieter now. If she shaped our past, then we shape what comes next. For a moment, the room carried fragile unity, the cracks still raw but bound by the need to resist. Outside, the morning light brightened, though the air remained heavy with foreboding. The room stilled, every breath sharp, as Claire whispered the final words. Justice isn't lost, it's stolen. Her voice echoed like a wound, reverberating against walls that had held betrayal and defiance. Daniel's eyes met hers, steady but haunted, while Michael lowered his head, broken beyond repair. Ethan's gaze flickered, torn between rebellion and surrender. Outside, the drizzle stopped, the air too still, as though the world itself listened. On the table, the papers fluttered slightly in the draft, carrying the weight of truths that may never see light. The silence that followed was not peace, but an unending question.